the patient care, the fact that your product will help a patient at some point is really what moves me as a medical sales representative. There's so many things at the top of his head throughout the day.
Yes.
For you to pretty much break into all of that noise to get your point across,
yes,
it's frequency most of the time that works. You know, some of the times doctors are so busy you might not get to do your entire presentation, because that is pretty much one of the key requirements of a sales representative, is to be a good presenter, to be a good communicator. What happens to is that you have to read a lot, because even if you think you have a degree,
yes,
there are some products where technology is changing so fast, and
every new product,
new
mechanism of action.
Right, and there's so much innovation taking place. So it's good when you can read the journals, keep ahead of the healthcare trends, new ideas that are coming out, be on top of the game at all times. So whenever you're having that conversation with a doctor, it helps so you don't feel awkward having it. So a science degree is very important.
In Office with Dr. Jevon Samuels.
Welcome to another episode of In Office. I am Dr. Jevon Samuels. In office with me today is a young, brilliant medical representative. His name is Mr. Gavin Dixon. All right, welcome to the show, Mr. Dixon. All right. So he's here today to tell us about medical representatives. They're actually an integral part of healthcare team, but normally not necessarily the ones who interact with patients directly, but they pretty much interact with the doctors and other healthcare workers, as he will share with us today. All right. So before we get into this interview, please remember to share, like, subscribe, and leave a comment on this video for more informative medical content. All right. Welcome to the show once more, Mr. Dixon. All right. Now, what exactly does a medical representative do, or what's the alternative names, etc.? Just introduce it for us, please.
Well, first and foremost, as a medical representative, there are a variety of product offers that you can pretty much represent, depending on the company that you're working for.
Okay.
Whether it could be a pharmaceutical company, it could be a medical device company. I've actually seen medical representatives in the health insurance space.
Okay.
Right, so depending on those different companies that you're working for, pretty much you'd have to tailor the requirements based on that. The companies that are requesting these persons to come in to represent their products would have to pretty much create a criteria requirement based on qualifications, based on knowledge areas that you would probably need to be familiar with, and also product understanding. So it can vary depending on the organization that you would be pretty much working for as a medical representative.
Okay, all right. So say for example, a medical company in Jamaica that basically would have like some medications, say for example for chronic illness medications, and they want to promote them to doctors. But what are some of the different means in which you guys promote these stuff to doctors, in terms of when they come to the doctor office, you go to the clinic, you go to the hospital, or keep seminars, etc.? What are some of the means in which you use to promote these products?
Right, that's a good question. There are several strategies that we go through in training, because we have to be trained as medical sales representatives. It's not a thing where it's something you learn in school to be a medical. The companies actually train you. So the strategies you use also are dependent on the company, which I did say in my first response. Through the training, they will teach you if it's a case where you need to bring detailed pieces to the doctor. Pretty much these are just little pamphlets with information about the pharmaceutical product that you're promoting, which would pretty much give you an idea as to the strength of the medication, mechanism of action, could have some information about the pharmacodynamics or pharmacokinetics, and pretty much outlining basic details. That's why they call them detailed pieces about the product. So that's one marketing approach that they have.
Yes.
It could be a case where you have what they call crack and peels, which are pretty much posters that they put on your wall.
Okay.
Some doctors may not like these posters because they want to keep the walls clean. They don't want, maybe it's a rented space and the landlord doesn't want anything on the wall. Stickers on the wall. The conferences are a big thing, because what conferences offer for medical sales representatives is a big crowd which you pretty much target in one go. So it's
Okay.
not a one-to-one, one doctor type of thing. It's like probably 1,000 doctors one time.
Yes.
Pretty much out of that 1,000, you hope you can get at least 200 buying your product.
Okay.
Right, based on the 80-20 rule.
Okay.
And most times, if it's not a conference, it's probably a case where you might have a little doctors meeting,
Yes.
where it could be at the clinics. We do visit clinics, even though it's not a big income generating thing for us, because clinics are pretty much government. Government takes a long time to pay.
Okay.
Mostly we target private institutions, because those are the entities that pretty much you'd have more financial gain from the private sector versus
Okay.
a public sector thing. So that's another marketing approach that they do have. And the regular, well, I did mention one-to-one, the conferences, you have seminars too, which
Yes.
are pretty much events where you would have like a key opinion leader,
Okay.
somebody that maybe a cardiologist, a specialist in a particular field that could pretty much incorporate your product into a case study, something that they would have done research on. Could be a stent, it could be a pacemaker,
Okay.
something like that they could pretty much incorporate your product into the conversation.
Okay. Sure.
At that presentation, you pretty much, the companies would look for these key opinion leaders to pretty much influence other doctors to buy into the product, because probably as a sales representative, you might not be the best person to really promote your product, because most times doctors tend to listen to other doctors,
Experts in the field.
other experts in the field, versus a sales representative who is probably not a doctor.
Okay.
More than likely. So those are some of the approaches that I do take.
Okay. All right. All right. What about you mentioned something about 80-20 rule?
Right.
What exactly is that? Because I was really familiar with that.
Well, that's pretty much a rule where most of the times, even though you target 100, so for example, you target 100 clients, some of the times 80% of them might not really buy your product. It's really 20.
Okay, all right. No problem.
Get the,
Just
the
curious.
sale from. Right.
Alright, no, so for example, I know, like, I'm really familiar with the sales rep. They tend to go like, that doctors are very busy in the clinic, but you guys still seem to come so frequent. What's the idea behind coming to us so frequent?
That's a good question. The frequency, Dr. Samuels, is more so to keep it at the top of a doctor's mind, for them to remember. Because there are so many other competitive companies, organizations that come to you every day. I'm sure you see a lot of medical reps coming
Yes.
in quite often. The aim is for you to be as frequent as possible, leaving samples so the doctor remember your product, because it's easy to forget when you have so many people, so many things doing too. Because just use an example of like a surgeon, he's doing surgeries, you have to talk to this person, probably an anesthesiologist.
Yes.
You might have to talk to somebody else, a nurse. There's so many things at the top of his head throughout the day.
Yes.
For you to pretty much break into all of that noise to get your point across,
Yes.
it's frequency most of the time that works. Some of the times doctors are so busy, you might not get to do your entire presentation, because that is pretty much one of the key requirements of a sales representative, is to be a good presenter,
Okay.
to be a good communicator, to be able to do public speeches and all of that. And some of the times you have to cut your presentation short, because the doctor is so busy, they don't have time for you. You have to pretty much highlight the main points and then leave, or probably send a follow-up email and say, okay, this is really what I really wanted to talk to you about, but I realized you had a surgery you need to do and you really didn't have the time of day for me. And probably you could schedule a follow-up call at a better time when he's more free,
Okay.
so you can have that full conversation with him. So those are some of the reasons why the frequency really comes into being a medical sales representative.
Alright, sometimes I'm a little bit impressed with some of the details some of these medical representatives read the pathophysiology and the pharmacology for some of these drugs. And then sometimes I'm asking them, and they seem to have this wide background of degree that they use to get a pharmacology job. So they don't necessarily need a pharmacology degree, they don't need a medical degree. Some persons see come in like even marketing degree, or I see some patients say they have psychology degree. So I'm wondering what's the baseline criteria to get a medical representative job?
That's also a good question. Right. Marketing is a good asset because personally, just to talk about myself a little bit, I do have an MBA, a master's in business administration,
Okay.
and I also have a first degree in medical technology.
Okay.
So it's somewhat of a balance between the two. The whole communication, presentation, marketing aspect, you do have that in an MBA, but you still need that scientific background where if you as a doctor ask about the pathophysiology, it shouldn't be an awkward conversation around it. Right? You shouldn't be wondering what is he really asking me, you know?
Okay.
So you should have that understanding of the product that you're pretty much detailing a doctor about. Because doctor needs to know how will this product help his or her patient. Right, and in the long term, just from a philosophical perspective, that is the real aim for me, real motivation for me.
Yes.
It's not so much the whole, everybody know that sales is an income sport.
Yes.
Right, but the patient care, the fact that your product will help a patient at some point is really what moves me as a medical sales representative. And it's good when a med rep has that science background, not to say that it's mandatory. I think in the first question I had said that the company would have to provide that criteria as to exactly what they need. Some companies need more marketing personality than a science. They tend to think that the science person tend to be more introverted, not really the good communication type of outgoing personality that you really expect from a medical sales representative. So some companies will choose anybody. It could be psychology, it could be political science, it could be somebody in social work. And it may not be a comfortable conversation with a doctor because doctors are technical persons and they need to understand the whole mechanism of action sometimes. Exactly. And you know, a social worker may not be the best person to give you that information. You need somebody with a medical background, with a nursing or a variety of specialists that go into medical sales representative. Nurses go into it a lot. Even though I wonder why sometimes nurses leave their job too. But I guess there are several factors that do influence that.
Okay.
I see pharmacists that do it too. Medical technologists like myself do go into that field. And just to piggyback a little bit more on the technical side is that not so much on the perspective of pharmaceutical products, but with machines. As a technologist, we operate a lot of machines, which is still a healthcare field, and you have to understand how these machines work to really function in that field. So even if you're having that conversation with a doctor, and so for example, doctor wants to start a lab, and he needs these are capital intensive machines. They're talking about 5, 6, probably $8 million for a machine. He needs to know what the return on his investment is. He needs to know how the machine works. Will it have any downtime? Will it run out of reagents used on the machine? Will he have an issue with quality control? Will the software work for a long term? So you need somebody with a technical background to explain all of that to a doctor. So I'm not saying that it's a mandatory thing for all medical sales representatives to have a science-based degree, but it's a major advantage. Major advantage because the conversations can be very awkward with a doctor when you don't have a scientific background, you don't have a biology or a chemistry background, or even a physics background. Because when it comes to the machines, these machines have a lot of physics into it, the whole electrical impedance, sometimes spectrophotometry, and you know, that's a lot of physics. Not the typical person a marketing degree could really expect.
I understand that. Right. Alright, now I know you mentioned a lot about the different machines, but I wanted to ask you a specific question that sometimes we have so many different companies and and medical representative is because you know that after we have the brand and the patent passed, then we have like a lot of generic drugs may come around, right? Sometimes I find that not all of them, but a few generic drugs, like some of the patients complain that they don't get the results that they get from the brand or some other forms of generic medicine. What's causing some of these difference in the quality of the medication that is produced?
Right. But you'd know that most of these medications aren't really manufactured in Jamaica. So they are overseas manufacturers. India primarily is where most of these medications come from that they use in the pharmaceutical space. And in terms of the difference in how these medications work, comparing a generic to a branded innovator product is, I wouldn't want to go too much into the technical side, but I think sometimes there are excipients that actually work alongside the molecule itself that may be altered when you have a generic drug. I'm not a pharmacist, but I'm just giving my idea of how it actually can have a difference in the outcome. Sometimes it's not a case where it's totally watered down, but the molecule itself might not be as stable. And you know, from a chemistry perspective, stability, potency of the molecule is a very important thing. So a drug innovator brand probably might have a stronger stability and a stronger potency than the generic. Not to say that generics are totally...
No, some generics are
very good. Yeah, some of them are very good. But I was saying that probably the whole clinical trial process, the whole process of testing the generic on human beings, it isn't done as it should be done. So that exception from the whole process of releasing a drug on the market does come with some disadvantages. And I know sometimes we don't admit it as much as we should because you know persons are marketing the drug.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes your patients complain.
Right. The patients
I don't believe they are lying.
Right. So those are some of the factors, which this is just my perspective, not from a company perspective.
Yeah, sure, definitely. I understand
it works like that.
Good. So in terms of, say for example, somebody is out there and want to enter the medical representative space as their profession. What are some of the tips that you would inform them about to be competitive in this field? Because whichever field they have so many persons, then we're gonna have like certain tips you could use to stay competitive and ahead of the game and to be successful in each field. All right. What are some of the strategies that you think work for yourself plus other drug reps that are doing very well used?
Good question. Organization skills, very important. Very important to be a self-motivated person as well. It might not come natural to you to be self-motivated, but it's very important because pretty much you'll be working on your own most of the time. So on the road, planning is very important. I mentioned organization, but planning is because each day you might have a list of doctors you need to see. And sometimes it doesn't work out as how you want it to work out. The reality is that you might want to see Dr. Jevon somewhere and he comes in at 3 o'clock. For some reason on your plan it might say 9 o'clock a.m. and he's not available. So you have to have that flexibility to shift your plan to make your day still work, even though you can't be too robotic with the process. Right. So that's one tip. The whole planning and organization, taking initiative is very important too. You can't be too laid back and you just allow things to fly past you because you'll get run over by the truck pretty much, especially go to somebody's hospital. It's a very busy place. If you're just there standing around, you're not gonna really get the attention you really need because everybody is doing the work. That's the same. So you have to take initiative to pretty much push a little and go out there into some person's personality may not really be like that, to be the type to be a little aggressive. But it does help. It does help in the industry to be a little bit assertive, aggressive, taking initiative. Communication is also important. I can't emphasize communication any further But it's good when you can have a good conversation, have the ability to speak in public, the ability to talk to a doctor, even though sometimes these doctors can be mean sometimes, because they are doctors, and they're smart, very smart people. You might not be as smart as them, but you might ask some questions sometimes you can't answer it.
Okay.
But it's good to accept that you don't know everything, and probably what you need to do is to go and do the research and come back with the information. And it does help the whole process too, because doctors like to see that you're taking initiative to ensure that their patient is getting the quality care that they really need. Because a doctor may not want to use your product because there's this one question they ask and you're already able to answer it.
Okay.
So the fact that you can go and get information, it could be information from your manager, could be information from the manufacturer. Because bear in mind, we aren't the ones who made the product, so we don't know everything about the product.
Okay.
So you could get that information and come back to the doctor with it. The doctor will appreciate that because he sees that you actually care about the whole process and the whole relationship building, which is an important thing too. As another tip, relationship building, to maintain a relationship. It can be a case where I come to Dr. Summers this month and the next 3 years Dr. Summers don't see me. I come to him with one product and then I just leave the product and him probably buy the product from me and I say, okay, quick sale man, let me not come back. Right? Relationship building, which is pretty much a technique we use to get resales. So you take a product this month, you check up on Dr. Samuels, find out how the product is doing, how is his patient responding to it. Pretty much that encourages him to probably buy the product a second time or a third time. So it can be a case where you're selling the product one time and it just disappear. Right? So that's another tip for persons who want to get into the space. Spend a lot of time. I would encourage persons just from an educational perspective to do a science degree. Going back to that point, a science degree is very important. It doesn't have to be a nursing degree or a degree in medical technology or a degree in pharmacy. It could be biology or biochemistry. Or even dietetics sometimes. I see some persons with dietetics degree, they do pretty well in the space. Because what happens too is that you have to read a lot. Because even if you think you have a degree, there are some products where technology is changing so fast. And
every new product has new mechanism of action.
Right. And there's so much innovation taking place. So it's good when you can read the journals, keep ahead of the healthcare trends, new ideas that are coming out, be on top of the game at all times. So whenever you're having that conversation with a doctor, it helps so you don't feel awkward having it. So a science degree is very important. And I think probably I did the perfect cocktail to do an MBA and as a first degree inside. So that business side does help as well. Right.
Alright, so sometimes some medical representatives, they come to discuss their product, they like to emphasize that if it's a generic, then it's actually same as effective as the brand. But they also tend to stress about the cost as well, alright? In terms of the costs, what are some of the things that would make a generic product so significantly less cheaper than the brand? Like sometimes the price difference is ridiculous. Like you may have the brand is for $6,000-7,000 and then you see the generic is for $1,000. And I'm wondering what could have really caused such a drastic difference in price.
Right.
That's something where some patient does not convinced that they could be the same effectiveness with such a significant difference in price.
Right. That hefty price, just from an economic perspective, for an innovator product is pretty much taking into consideration all the research and development that has been done to pay for a patent, to spend years trying to discover something for hypertension or to come up with some new drugs with some new mechanism of action for example, a particular fungus that probably is a multi-resistant fungus or a bacteria. So all of that R&D that goes into that, they need to pay for it. So that hefty cost doesn't mean that the molecule itself costs that much money. It's the fact that this company invested all of these funds to come up with this drug, which is why it costs that much. Now, when a generic company comes on now, and they pretty much is a carbon copy of the innovator, I mean, they're just selling the molecule. That's all they're selling.
Okay.
They're not really doing any R&D, so they have to pay for all of those 15 years of research and development. So R&D does influence how the pricing is done for these innovators. It's not that the molecule itself costs that much. It's R&D, right.
All right, we can touch on the issue of medication for chronic illness versus antibiotics, because I was informed that some of the different drug companies not so interested in say like antibiotics because like for example the bacteria becoming resistant to them, so we kind of have not keeping up to date with new antibiotics as we are with chronic illness medication. What's the latest update where that is concerned? Chronic illness versus like acute illness medication like antibiotics.
I think drug companies tend to focus more on chronic because these are lifetime medications.
Yes.
So just an honest answer.
Yes.
Right. It's worth the while to do the R&D for something like that versus antibiotic. You take an antibiotic for 1 week and the infection is gone.
Yes.
Right. It's not a thing where you're continuously taking it. I mean, which is why having a business degree, it helps me because I look on these companies from a business perspective. They're not going to spend billions of dollars doing R&D on acute medication.
Okay.
When a chronic medication is there that they could invest more money into, and when there's a breakthrough, then the patient pretty much spends the rest of their life on the medication. Right. Hypertension, for example, diabetes being another one. These medications, patients tend to use them quite often. So when the research is being done, these would be top priority for a company, which, you have to be honest, profit and loss is pretty much what companies exist for. Okay. It's all about the P&L. And even though patient care does come at the forefront of all of it, they tend to focus their energies more so on medications that would more so have a positive return on the investment. Okay. Antibiotic may not necessarily have a positive ROI. There are so many antibiotics out there. Not to say that there isn't a need for more, because there are still some multi-drug organisms that I actually have seen some in my lifetime, which I'm wondering why isn't there antibiotic that they could be sensitive to, susceptible to. Right, I've seen those. Even at the laboratory level too, I've seen them. Right. So there's room for more innovation in that space, but as I mentioned, from a business perspective, the person's looking on a profit and loss would more so put more energy into a chronic versus acute. Okay,
right. All right. Now, for example, different occupation, we can readily see how they would assess like a doctor, a nurse, or a pharmacist. How does like a company assess how good a geography is doing? Because even if you are going to the doctor and say promoting a product, how do they know which geography is getting these sales, etc.?
Right, good question. Good question. There are regions, and more than often, it's a case where a specific rep is put in a region to promote a particular product line.
Okay.
Line of products could be a specific company, because some of these distribution companies in Jamaica, we don't really have pharmaceutical companies in Jamaica, it's more so distributors.
Distributors, okay. And
there could be a product line for a specific company that this rep is doing. There's accounts involved in the process. There's an accounting department, there is inventory, a warehouse department that is involved in the process. So it's not only what we see here, like in a doctor's office.
Yeah.
It's at the warehouse, at the headquarters, where they keep track of what is being sold on a day-to-day basis. So even though we come and we have the conversation with the doctor might write a prescription or two and it goes to the pharmacy. That pharmacy pretty much dispensing that drug or that brand to the patient. Over time we need to refill orders to get more. So there's only one place you can get the orders from, which is your company.
Okay.
Because if that is a brand that the doctor is requesting, so for example, the name of the brand is Lipitor, right?
Yeah.
Just to use an example.
Yeah.
Lipitor wasn't one of my brands, but I'm just using that.
Yeah.
Doctor writes Lipitor and the pharmacist sees it, pharmacist dispenses Lipitor to the patient. They would need more of the product once it runs out. So the inventory person at the warehouse would track the sales over time to see if that medical rep is actually doing work. Some of the times it might not work like that because companies have different strategies too. They have a strategy where they do actually want you to see a specific amount of doctors per day, specific amount of pharmacists per day. But what it all boils down to is how much of the product is being sold in that region. So that's how they track if as a medical rep is doing the work that they should do. Right. So that's the performance indicator that they use to pretty much determine if what is supposed to be done is being done. Otherwise, you'd have to have a conversation with the manager to explain, right? And that's not really a conversation you want to have, to explain why the products aren't moving as they should. And probably you're saying you're seeing doctors who probably aren't prescribing them. They might come with Lipitor, but instead of them prescribing Lipitor, they're prescribing another brand called Lipirest or something like that. Right. So that's how it works.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you a question. I'm not sure if it is above your level, but sometimes we have like some medication that works really well. Alright? Some of the heart failure medication, some of the medication for diabetes. And we know here in Jamaica that the drug serve system, which the patients can access the medication for free. Alright? Sometimes, why is it so difficult to get some of these medication in the drug serve system? Is it a cost issue or it's just a issue of management having difficulty to persuade the government to get them in?
Right. I think you answered the question. Right. So it's an issue of persuading the government to get them in.
Okay.
Not all the medications that are available in the island are in the drug serve. So you have some that you won't get in that drug serve because of bidding issues or based on the tenders that they do, based on what agreements you have with NHF and the companies, based on how the Ministry of Health pays. Because some of the times it makes more economic sense for a company to stick to private pharmacies compared to going to a drug serve because how quick the monies are being paid. Ministry of Health probably doesn't pay as quick as it should. Right. Okay. So those have to be taken into consideration. These companies, they have employees that they need to pay on a monthly basis. They need cash on hand to make those. And the whole cash conversion process too can be a little lengthy when you use some of these government entities. Right, but the drugs are available may not be, it's not a case, it's not in the island, or it's not a case where it can't be in drug serve.
Yes.
It's just based on the agreements that probably the company has with NHF.
Okay, right. Alright, at this point, I basically covered most of the stuff I wanted to ask you. But is there anything that I think I left off that you would like to share with the viewers about medical representative and the impact on healthcare?
Right. There's a lot that we offer, a whole lot, and to tell you the honest truth, there's still more to come. A medical representative is more so a people person than a product person.
Okay.
Right. It's not so much about the product, it's about you as a person and how well you are at building relationships. Because to be honest with you, today you might be promoting this product and it may not be really what the doctor wants.
Yes.
you have to come with something else the next day because you have to understand it's all about discovering the needs in the marketplace.
Okay.
And based on your location, economical, and the patients cannot afford this drug or they can't afford this medical device. So being that people person, it pretty much allows you to discover what the needs are in a particular location and to fulfill those needs. Right, so it's more about listening. It's more listening than talking sometimes.
Okay.
Because we tend to ask a lot of open-ended questions, and what that does for a medical sales representative is to allow them to pretty much do market research, to understand what the doctor really needs. We don't want to be selling something that you're not interested in buying. Okay. Which is pretty much wasting your time and wasting my time as well. Right. So that's something I would want the viewers to understand about the era, to just understand that we are more people-oriented than product-oriented, and the patients really come first. The patients do come first. Right?
Alright, so thanks very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to come and have this conversation on my channel today. Right, so I just wanted to highlight medical representative because I know that it's probably one of those essential occupations in the medical field that probably one of the persons that don't really interact directly with patients, so to speak. But in terms of your contribution to the healthcare, in terms of introducing doctors to new products, combination products that are less expensive, basically I've learned a lot from Drug Prep in terms of different brands, etc. And I really appreciate you taking the time out to come and share this information with us. Alright? Thanks very much.
Sure.
Take care. Alright? So viewers, remember as usual, remember to share, subscribe, leave a comment on this video. Until next episode, keep safe.
Be sure to subscribe for more informative contents on life, sickness, and death.